So we're still at Art Toronto 2012, and we're at the Elan Fine Art Limited booth, and I'm here with Dimitri Papatheodorou. I'm sorry, I said your name wrong.
Oh, that's all right. Most people do. It's Papatheodorou.
Papatheodorou. You know, I think being an artist as well and concerned with publicity, I use the full spelling of my name, so it takes up as much room on the invitation card or in the listings as possible. So,
I have you beat.
Yes.
My name is way bigger than yours.
I'm feeling a little intimidated, but you know, it's
well, you are taller.
I am taller, but it's really how you use your name. Not
Well, it's funny, you know, because we have George Stroumboulopoulos,
yes.
right? I almost fumbled his name. And I really admire him because he didn't change his name at all.
He sure did not.
And it's maybe even harder to pronounce than my name. So I think that's a really interesting lesson. You know, I'm a bit older than he is. I'm in my late 40s. And when I was growing up, it was not cool to have such an ethnic name in the 60s. And in fact, our names are often twisted around and changed by our teachers.
Yes.
I guess we're not really talking about the art, but this is interesting too because it has a lot to do with identity. And so I was Jimmy instead of Dimitri. In fact, that's probably something most Dimitris were called. They were called Jims.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is kind of related to
identity.
To what we do. Is because there's a lot of pressure to Westernize your name. There's a lot of pressure to Westernize your art, your sensibility.
Yeah.
And I guess an obvious example of that, I think his name is Brian Jurgen. He's a native Canadian artist, and he keeps telling a story about how he was advised to stop focusing on native sort of imagery and focus more on, you know, what real contemporary art is.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Emily Carr College.
And if he had, then he wouldn't be famous as he is now.
Well, then, he would.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So, I mean, it's a lot of it.
And it's just not right.
A lot of our success or innovation comes from being counterintuitive. And so,
true.
like, you know, being proud now, I could put my name back to the Welsh spelling, I guess, but I don't even know what that is. So,
well, you could probably find out. Just, you know, click it, you know, Google it or something.
And could I ever pronounce my own name at that point? No, this is going to be a good series of work. Thanks for the idea.
Oh, very good.
It's sort of Brendan Fernandez
But
thing.
it's interesting because I think if we can tie that to that notion of identity to maybe work itself, it takes a while for most artists to find their voice, to find their style, if you will, or their signature, motif. And maybe that all of those words don't really adequately describe, the work that they're doing. But it's really interesting because, like a lot of artists, doing it for a long time, I've done a lot of different types of creative work, and in media, and using different media as well. You know, from figurative to art edge to conceptual art to video art, etc. And I think this series of work that you have on your camera right now is about. I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and I kind of returned to an idea that I actually pursued when I was a kid, which was kind of just doing stuff that explores light and shadow. And so, remember in high school art class, you were asked to render a platonic solid like a sphere or ball or a triangle.
Some boxes on a piece of paper on a table. Yeah.
And so, that was a wonderful exercise and actually has some significant meaning as well in terms of Western art. And for me, the fascination was how to make it as beautifully modeled and rendered as possible using pencil crayon or graphite. Actually, was the one that was the most interesting. With my hand and my eye, and developing kind of a technique and a beauty out of that. And so after many years of practicing different things, I returned to that very simple idea of rendering light and shadow, and then but exploring it in oil paint and kind of the traditional glazing techniques, which of course take some time to figure out and master.
Yeah.
And so while I was Jimmy back then, and I'm Dimitri now, I have gone back to kind of my roots as a kid in terms of finding out what kind of art I really love to do, and I remember for the last 20 years not liking it when people called me Jimmy, right?
Okay,
because I was now Dimitri, but now I'm kind of returning to when I went to Greece last year. My relatives still call me Jimmy, right? And they're removed from my identity as being Dimitri, because they remember me from when I was a little kid, and I'm much more comfortable with being called Jimmy now, even though it's kind of come full circle. It's a really interesting thing. It's about being comfortable in your own skin.
Well, it's interesting because you and I, at our age, we grew up before the interwebs really, became prominent. And,
what do you mean? I'm only 26.
Yeah, I'm only 19, and in sort of like Halley's Comet years. Now, so with traditional media, which was TV, radio, and then newspaper, there was a lot more emphasis on the spoken word.
Yeah.
So there was like the sort of westernization, shorten your name kind of like maybe sort of trend. Yeah. But now that there's a lot of sort of like text-based instant media, like social media, we can just read names without ever having to say them. So it's a lot more. It's more of a distinctive character than it is a phonetic sort of experience, in a way, perhaps.
Oh, thank you for that observation. I had never thought about it that way before.
Neither did I until talking to you.
Hey,
but, yeah,
we should do this together all the time.
We should do this together.
Do you want to go look at some other art?
Yeah, that's what I used to do. I used to grab a guest host, and we'd go and we'd look at art and chat about it. Sometimes I'd bring an improv comedian friend, trying to bring a different angle to it. But some golden nuggets came out of that experience. And when you're talking about doing this traditional media as well, I mean, I really keyed off on what you said there. I mean, as an artist, I had to go back to my parents' basement and sort through like 20 years of old work I didn't necessarily want to go through again.
It's hard.
But oh my gosh, there's some stuff there I pulled out that I need to finish, like from 20 years ago. Some exercises or some works I completely forgot about, or directions. And
I've had that same experience as well.
Yeah.
And some things I really did want to throw out, but there
yeah, for
but
sure.
Isn't it wonderful? Getting old kind of sucks on many levels, but on some levels it's actually pretty good.
I wouldn't trade what I've sort of
forever.
figured out for anything. I enjoy figuring things out.
At least we could do it all over again.
In a way, I'd invest in stocks in Microsoft or something. But I'd be buying art here, instead of just reviewing it.
I see you're filming on an iPhone.
I am. Yeah. This has made an entire difference to my...
Is that HD or is it regular?
It's HD.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we'll be able to see the shakiness of my arm in full definition.
But it probably has a stabilizer built into it, too.
Yeah, and also YouTube has come a long way, and you're able to stabilize videos once you upload them.
That's very interesting.
Which is, again, a very interesting and relevant art review video sort of thing to mention, because there's a lot of problems with not having a tripod, but that's almost been neglected. So I'm all about like removing the production value to introduce the general public as much as possible to artists and art. Yeah. And so having a sort of low production or low overhead sort of process is a very important part of that.
We were talking before you started the camera about James Collin out of New York.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Who does this video blog, if you will. It's quite well known. And his hand, I don't know, I haven't seen his most recent work, but it's really shaky. So perhaps he needs to invest in an iPhone or something.
He needs to do a little bit of post-production work.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
But in my philosophy, seriously, is even if it's like shaky, still get it up because it's historically important. Like,
and it's immediate too. What I often think about architecture and art, because I'm an architect, as being similar in many ways, because it takes a long time to do the work and produce it and enjoy it and consume it. Unlike being a chef or cooking, which is like really you cook it and you eat it and it's all wrapped up in an evening and it's really exciting. And I think with YouTube and these wonderful blogs that people like you do, it is instant consumption. It can be consumed more than once.
Yeah. Right?
You can play it back and go back to it. And it's also historically significant because it's going to be there for a long time. So
and what's funny is I told you I went around with some sort of people and we tried doing sort of some of them turned out well. We did a lot of jokes or sort of riffing off a lot of shows. But some of these goofy videos I did, years later, I've had some of the gallery owners tell me that was the only documentation they could find of their shows. Was the silly videos I did early on.
That's happened to me too. I had a show at Ryerson University in the Department of Architectural Science. I had a painting show, and it was so busy that October that I didn't get to photograph it. And that was 2 years ago, and this year they came back to me and asked me for my document photographs that they can archive it, etc. And I didn't have any. I thought, Holy cow! What happened? You should have been there for me.
I should have been there. That's
I'm going to call you up every time now.
That's just fine. I was thinking of like just renting an empty studio and then painting it white and doing a fake gallery like series of shows and documenting them all, and sort of accomplishing the same sort of like what we're really after at the end of the day is the media more than the actual immediate presence of the show. But enough about this
puppet show.
Yeah, essentially, we're all puppets and there's a big show. But enough about sort of this highfalutin media theory. Let's talk about your work,
okay.
Which is luscious, glazed, in a very traditional application. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of making these paintings?
Sure. The paintings take many months to create. They are built up out of layers and layers of oil glaze. So I'm using an alkyd medium with a minimal amount of pigment for each glaze. The initial image is just simply drafted onto the wood panel. It's usually composed right on the wood panel, so I have a lot of images, obviously, architectural images and kind of spatial ideas. They're all almost 100% interior spaces, and sometimes they don't look like spaces at all, but they look like shapes, apertures, thresholds into a different space. So going back to technique, the initial painting is just blocked out, like kind of doing solid colors, and then through the process of layering paint, you get the kind of gradation and depth of field that you see right now. So the paintings are a lot. There's depending on the lighting, bright or dim. Light sort of penetrates into the surface, and depending on the intensity of the light, you get a certain result coming back out at you. A lot like, for me, the paintings. This might sound a bit funny, but they're kind of like they're figurative in a way. They're about flesh. Think about skin as for me they're like skin in the sense that skin is luminous and it has layers and layers, and the colors that come from skin are largely dependent on the lighting conditions that exist around it. And I want to create in the work sensuality and beauty like there is in the human form, but we're taking away sort of literal figurative elements in it. So even though they're architectural and abstract, hard edge, if you will, for me there is a connection between architecture and human form. I mean, architecture is an extension of the body. It's another layer. It's like clothing. I mean, I think fashion is also can be tied into that on a certain level. So for me, architecture and the human form, the body, are intricately or experientially connected. So yeah, I'd like to explore that some more in the future as well, with maybe even going into taking it to the other side of the continuum and exploring the figure with the background thought of it being an architectural environment or space or some sort of connection to that.
Yeah, this is to me these shapes. In this case, this long rectangle and the square are really sort of dictating as I'm standing here, where my physical perspective is in this space. It kind of robs me of the scale of what I'm looking at.
That's right.
But the deliberate constructiveness of it is also informing me of the perspective at the same time. So I'm really enjoying that sort of like conceptual physicality of it. It's not an abstract. I don't get the sense it's an abstract work.
Yeah.
I get the sense there is a concrete shapes at play in here.
Yeah.
And also, I think this is part and parcel with the process of this traditional application of glazes. Is my eye is flowing over this surface very easily and very smoothly, and then it's just falling into the light, into this thing at the end. So
I'm going to have to abstract what you just said and put it into my next artist statement. Thank you.
No problems. I've done some sort of work that's somewhat similar approaches as well, and spent a lot of time sort of thinking about it. So I'm really
well. Let's do this again, and we'll reverse the camera, and we'll look at your work.
Oh yeah, sure.
So as you were talking, I was thinking about the vertical line of the painting that you're looking at right now, and how that is very much figure. It's very much figure, like the vertical standing, human, if you will. It's also spirit. It's also ghostly in appearance. It's also threshold. So it's both object and space.
Right.
And I mean, if we think about, I know it sounds really corny, but life and death and the kind of
yes, absolutely. That's
the kind of the presence of the body in life, and also kind of the memory of the body as I suppose spirit, if you will, or something like that. I think your words have made me think about my work in a different way now.
Head towards the light.
Yeah, exactly.
Or don't go in the light. I'm always confused. I don't know.
Stay away from the painting. It's going to suck you in.
Certainly don't touch the painting. Yeah. All right, well, Dimitri, thanks very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we're going to be talking to you again.
I had a great time. Thank you.